Hey everyone, Mobius1 here, bringing you another Star Wars Galaxies emulator video. In this video we're going to talk a little bit about some of the graphics options that you can find in-game. Now, I'm sure I've probably talked about this in one of my really old videos going over the basics, or I think I even talked about some of them in my old screenshots video, but I've noticed a lot more people have started streaming Galaxies on Twitch, and I'm really quite surprised at how many of them have their graphics settings not optimized. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand Galaxies is a very old game and the graphics have not aged all that well. So let me get one thing out of the way, because I do have a lot of people that ask me this. No, I don't run any graphics mods for Galaxies. I do have my FPS set to 60, which you can do through the Galaxies launchpad. You don't have to have a mod for that. As a matter of fact, the only mod that I'm running is Sitner's satellite map mods. Whatever. It makes the maps look different. And I like this because it's an actual representation of what the map looks like instead of the artist rendition of one that is part of the default game. But as far as what you actually see while playing, no, there's no mods here. This is actually all done with what the game has to offer. And when you look out at that, you might not really be impressed by that hill in the background, right? Like, it looks pretty low res. The textures are very basic. But would you be surprised to know that a lot of you out there have it looking like this? Yeah, if Galaxies looked like this all the time, I'd probably complain about it too. I watch streamers almost every day, driving around doing missions, grinding out the village, doing whatever, and their terrain and textures are popping in as they travel across the terrain. And yeah, look at how horrendous this is, right? Like, that's really bad. But that's not how the game has to look. This is actually a really good spot to demonstrate this because you can see these hills in the background. They look like, really basic polygons. I think part of the problem is most people, when they create their character, they sign in for the first time, and they set up their graphics options the way that they want them to and expect them to stay the same. Unfortunately, the Galaxies client doesn't behave like most clients, especially if you're running two tunes simultaneously. For some reason or another, whenever you try to sign in a second tune, because you are allowed to have two tunes online at the same time on Basilisk, some of your graphics options will actually reset. And you might not notice it right away because your first tune is going to be fine. But that second tune that you sign in, the graphics options aren't going to match the first tune. And then when you quit the game and come back the next day or later on or whatever, the graphics are going to be scaled down again. So what graphics options am I talking about? Well, if you open up your menu, the two biggest offenders are under the terrain category here on the side. These top two sliders, Global Terrain Detail and Terrain High Detail Range, will, for whatever reason, reset themselves to the far left whenever they feel like it. Now ready? Watch this mountain in the background as I move these sliders. Just the top one. Now the bottom one. Okay, so, I mean, it's no Bob Ross mountain. But compare that to that. It's even more apparent when you're looking at stuff that's not super far away from you. I mean, these little hills here look just as bad as that mountain. But watch when I actually move these up. There you go. Now you can even see some of the foliage on there. It's got much more of a natural shape to it. The textures get a little bit more high res, but I mean, they're still fairly low res. But again, like, I don't know how many people I see playing like this when they should be playing like this. A couple of the other options you can look at, like the flora distance, is how far like the grass around you spawns. Obviously, that's kind of up to you. Water detail, that's up to you. You don't even need to render the flora if you don't want to. Under the actual graphics tab is where you have control over your total viewing distance. Field of view, by default, I believe, is all the way to the left here at 60 degrees. And to me, this just feels too flat. On the other hand, maxing field of view out to 120, this feels just very weird. So I actually prefer mine right smack in the middle at 90 degrees. I think this is a good balance of not being right on top of your toon and not, you know, distorting dimensions of characters. So another option that sometimes resets itself is right here, fade objects. It'll turn itself off, and what that does is that makes things kind of pop into the frame as you get closer to them. You can see these buildings as they render in, they just kind of physically pop into existence. Trying to find a good example of that, and I can't seem to find any in the distance that want to load. Am I lagging? Or are there just no buildings over here? There's got to be some out there. Okay, there you go. You see how these trees and stuff are like popping into frame? If you turn fade objects on, instead of just blinking into existence, they kind of, well, fade into existence. You can see up there in the top right there. Yeah, there we go. That's some good examples. Obviously, it's not, you know, a huge deal, but it is an option that will sometimes reset itself. Show detailed world objects. I can't seem to figure out what is considered a detailed world object. I imagine they're things that don't have an impact really on gameplay. Like, I don't know. I can't figure out. If somebody can find out what a detailed world object is and show me what this option actually toggles, I'll give you 100,000 credits. Two more quick things I want to talk about before I wrap this video up. The first one is shadows. You'll notice that I actually play with shadows off. That's because shadows in galaxies are very, very poorly optimized. Even high-end PCs can struggle to maintain consistent frame rates while in congested areas such as cities when you have shadows on. So let's get on a swoop, start driving around Mos Eisley, and just, I'm not sure how well my new graphics card is going to show this off because I did just upgrade. But you can see here how smooth the frame rate is with no shadows. And now let's turn them on. Okay, first we have just simple, which a simple shadow, you can see it puts a little circle underneath my character and my swoop. That's not such an offender. But now if I go and turn on volumetric shadows, not only does that just look goofy, because now my character has his own shadow and the swoop doesn't, but I think if I were to be in an area with a lot more characters, yeah, it's starting to, you know, not really. It slows a little bit, but not much. However, let's turn volumetric on. Oh wait, I have shadow detail all the way down. All right, let's turn this up. And non-character shadows, let's give that volumetric. Okay. So that definitely makes the game feel a little bit more moody. But now let's see, is there any different frames? Not entirely. Actually, it seems like I might be able to finally, in 2018, I might be able to get consistent frames with volumetric shadows. But believe me, I'm not joking about this. If you experience frame loss when you enter cities or populated areas, try turning your shadows off. I guarantee you it'll clear some of that up. Even though I can run shadows, apparently, here's why I choose not to. To save on memory, the game doesn't actually render buildings that aren't in frame. And you can actually see this when shadows are on. So obviously the starport here is casting a shadow on the floor that I'm on. But if I turn the camera enough away from the starport, oh look, its shadow disappeared. That's because the game is no longer rendering it behind me. If I turn back, the shadow pops back. So it's really obvious when you're driving down a street and as you pass buildings, their shadows keep disappearing in front of you. And I think for every bit of detail the shadows add to the game, that little detail ruins it. So to just not have to see that, I would just rather shadows not exist at all. I think it looks a lot better when you don't see that. Obviously, that's just my opinion on that. If you like the volumetric shadows and your PC can handle it, by all means, take advantage of that. For this last one, we're going to actually go into the cantina, where hopefully a lot of people are still hanging out. I'm kind of recording this video a little late. The option that I'm referring to is under the graphics category. It is Enable CharacterLOD Manager. It says enable this option to allow the client to automatically control how many high and medium quality characters are rendered at any given time. What does that mean? That means if you're in an area where there are a lot of characters to render, if you have Enable CharacterLOD Manager on, the game is going to force some of the character models to be low res. There's nowhere where that is more obvious than when you're in a populated cantina. So right now, my character is high res. This Twi'lek dancing next to me might be high res, and some of these other characters around me, no. See, I can even tell this Trandoshan's arm is not high res. This droid is not high res. This Twi'lek's face is not high res. This Twi'lek dancing in the background and those stormtroopers are definitely not high res. And the cantina band in the back are not either. However, if you go in your options and turn this option off, watch all of those models pop their quality up. Ready? Go. Look at that. Now I can actually see the details on those stormtrooper helmets back here. You can actually see this blue Twi'lek's face on the right here. And you can actually see the cantina band. We just bump that back and forth. Look at, like, everything changes. Look at the droid. Look at the R2 unit. Look at the guys. Look at these guys here standing in front of the cantina. They get, like, look at their arms. The one dude's arm. That's funny. So make sure that's off. But that's going to be it for this video. Hopefully some of you out there learned some things about your options in this video. And maybe a lot of you already knew this, but I can guarantee you there's some people out there streaming that don't. Sorry if you guys feel like I covered this in an earlier video, but if I did, it's such an old video, it's probably worth restating anyway. That's all for now, though. Thanks for watching, guys. Mobius1 here, and I'll see you in the next one.